Hey everyone, Evan Swanson here with Guild Mortgage, here for another episode of Real Talk. And today we're talking with my friend Robin Springer, who's a principal broker over at Windermere in Moreland. Robin, say hi.
Hi, thank you for having me on today, Evan. It's great to be here.
It's all my pleasure. And we were just talking before I hit the record button. One of the things I like to do is help professionals tell their story and explain how they got to where they got and how that influences. I've had the pleasure of working with Robin on and off now for a number of years and have always admired the way that you do your business and the results speak for themselves. I looked it up and you're in the top 1% of realtors in the Portland metro area. So congrats, whatever you're doing, Robin, it seems to be working.
Well, thank you very much. I love working with you too. So it's a good partnership.
But let's go back. Because I know you're a gigantic Alabama fan. So tell me about growing up, where you grew up, and how that love of Alabama came to be.
Sure. So I grew up in Alabama and everybody down there is football crazy. And so you have to choose a team, either Alabama or Auburn. And we were Alabama fans. And so, as my dad used to say, God rest his soul, we had the best coach money could buy. So, and some of the best players money could buy.
Yeah,
But yeah, I love watching Alabama football. And quite frankly, that was one of the things I think that my husband liked when we first met is on Saturday mornings, I wanted to watch football with him. And
that's
he was
awesome.
like, oh my gosh, a woman who likes football, this is great. So
That's awesome.
yeah, yeah,
Okay, Auburn, Alabama, huge rivalry. That's the Iron Bowl, right?
yeah,
Okay, how
yeah.
many Iron Bowls would you estimate you've watched in your career?
Oh gosh. I can't even guess how many. I mean, I'm in my 50s, so
A
you know,
lot.
at least 40 years worth of football. And yeah, I mean, I have great memories of being with my dad and watching football on a Saturday morning or a Sunday morning, Sunday afternoon. So yeah,
That's awesome. That's awesome.
yeah, super
Uh,
fun.
that's great. And yeah, so and to this day, you do not miss. Do you watch every Alabama game or most Alabama?
No, not every Alabama game. And to be fair, like I do root for LSU if they're not playing Alabama, and I do love the Ducks too. So
Okay,
I
good.
married
You're going to
into a
make a lot of
family.
friends here in Oregon soon.
Yeah, yeah. I married into a family that were huge Duck fans, so I had to become a Duck fan as well, which is super fun, and I love seeing the Ducks win too. So.
Right on, right on. Okay, so let's talk about moving from Alabama to Oregon. What brought you
Mhm.
out to Oregon?
So after I graduated from college, I actually meandered a little bit. I lived down in the Caribbean for a year
I
with a
didn't know that. That's awesome.
yeah, yeah, with a girlfriend of mine from high school. We lived down on St. John and then spent a year there. And then we moved out to Jackson, Wyoming and spent another year out there. And I always knew I wanted to go to law school, and I just had to figure out where I wanted to go. And I loved being out west and thought I wanted to be an environmental lawyer and, save the trees and all that. And so I looked at environmental law schools and came across Lewis and Clark, sounded like a great fit here in Portland. And so I moved to Denver for a year and kind of got myself together, studied for the LSAT, worked for the legislature there, and then applied to law school. So, and then I got into Lewis and Clark
Awesome.
in 96.
Okay.
And so moved out to Portland in 96 and started law school.
You've been here ever since.
Been here ever since.
Yeah, and
Yes.
Lewis and Clark Law School, as I understand, is one of the best environmental law schools in the country, correct?
Yeah. At the time that I started, it was the number one law school. So it was between that or Vermont Law School, which is in a
Okay.
tiny little town in Vermont, which beautiful, but I really wanted more of an urban setting. And Portland seemed like an interesting place. I moved here sight unseen,
Okay.
never visited. And I, tell people if somebody had told me in 1993 when I graduated from college that I'd moved to Portland, Oregon, I would have been like, what? Why? Why would I do that? So it's just funny that where life takes you, because you really never know where you're going to end up.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, we're glad we got you. That's
Well,
for
thank you.
sure.
I'm glad to be
So
here.
so you got your law degree and then began to practice law.
I did. I did. I worked at the DA's office here in Multnomah County for about 7 years, and started off as a young DA prosecuting everything from theft cases to DUIs, and then worked my way up to prosecuting juvenile sex offenders. And then I decided I didn't really want to do that anymore.
Hmm. Hmm.
It was really a great office and loved working with so many of the people there, but it was really a stressful environment with a lot of emotional components.
Sure.
And so I decided, you know what, I just want to deal with, you know, financial crimes or something like that. So I ended up going into private practice and did that for about 4 years. And the last place I worked was at a big firm downtown, and I was doing litigation down there as well. So,
Okay, got it. But through
yeah.
all that, I mean, you're learning a lot about the legal system, about laws, about property rights,
Mhm.
and all the things that contribute to a real estate contract.
Yeah, I mean, truth be told, I didn't do a lot of like property law. That
Hmm.
wasn't a huge component of my practice area, but I did have a lot of experience with negotiations, with talking to people, explaining a process to clients
Mm.
or victims. That was the probably the best preparation I could have had, because going into real estate, it's all about explaining the process to clients
Hmm.
and letting them know what their options are, and then, giving them the information so they can make an educated decision. So very
Absolutely.
similar.
Absolutely. And
Mhm.
that you got to learn in a legal setting, but that skill in communication has transferred well. And one of the things I love about you mentioned on your website and your bio is that commitment to professionalism. And it's something that I witness whenever we work with you and your clients. And it's a core value of our teams as well. You know, it's our belief that consumers deserve a competent and professional person to work with in a real estate transaction, and you absolutely demonstrate that. So, I mean, tell us about that. How did your experience influence how you have set up your client engagements in terms of how you work with buyers and sellers?
Right, right. Well, I think the most important thing is it's not about me. It's about my clients and what's in their best interest. And that has been the position I've taken from the very beginning. And so one of the things that I never do is I don't represent both sides of a transaction. And I don't represent a seller and a buyer in the same transaction.
Hmm.
And that simply goes back to my days of being an attorney, where you advocate to your utmost ability for your client. And so the idea that you could somehow represent another party at the same time, I just couldn't wrap my head around that. And
Right.
so I just made a decision early on that I wasn't going to do that. And I am just going to be there for my clients. I think that makes a difference. And then again, what I was saying earlier is it's really about the client and trying to make this an easy experience for them, and trying to present information in a way that makes sense to them, and then giving them all the options, and then also being there for them if they choose to go a different way, like
Hmm.
that, and just to be there as a basis of support.
Right.
It's always telling to me that so many of my clients are attorneys, and they still hire a real estate broker to help guide them through the process, because they know that it's like anything. You don't know what you don't know,
Hmm.
and you need somebody who's going to help you through that.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, you touched on a couple of things there, which is one thing that I heard you say that I really, really want to emphasize and I love is the commitment to the client, right? You're not worried about the self-serving factors of, I mean, listen, we do this for a living. We make money to, to serve our families, but like ultimately we're going into an engagement with a customer without the focus on that. The focus is I know my strengths, I know my competencies. I want to listen to you, customer, and understand what your challenges are, what your needs are, and then in a transparent manner, try and demonstrate if I can help you solve your problems. And if I can't, then we have to be professional enough to say, hey, you know what, I may not be a good fit for your situation. Let's move on. And then the second thing is that communication in the process, because this is a topic that is absolutely going to be more and more important moving forward in the real estate industry following this NAR settlement. As I think the media has created a problem for the real estate community in that they have portrayed the job of a realtor to be a property finder. And that is so
Right.
far from what you do, right? What you do is once the property is found, everything from there, including helping the process make sense with the buyer or seller. Here's what to expect. Here's what's going to happen next, and then that's what happens, right? And so I think that's huge. Talk to me a little bit too about negotiation. I mean, negotiation is an art. And how has that influenced? How has your legal background and all that experience you had negotiating in that career helped you become a more competent professional in the real estate industry?
Sure. A couple of different things. I mean, when I was negotiating as a DA, we're talking about jail terms versus prison terms, things like that. When we're talking about private practice, it was, millions of dollars and what the client is going to agree to versus do they take the case to trial and see if they have a better result. And so there are many different types of negotiating styles. And so really trying to figure out how your the agent on the other side or their client is negotiating. And then each of our clients has a different negotiating style. So, they may want to go in low and see if they'll get a counter and then end up someplace else. So it's really asking questions to find out what your client's comfort level is and then what their end game is. So if you go to X price, are you going to be okay with that? Is that your bottom line, or do you want to give up the house? So I think having as much information that you can is really important. And then the second thing is knowing when you're in a position of power to negotiate. So there are some situations where you're in a position of power and you know it, and you can be a more aggressive negotiator. And there are other times where I have to have the conversation and say, look, there are multiple offers in this case. Like, we're not going to be able to ask for a lot when it comes time for repairs because the seller is just going to go to the next offer that's in backup position. And so having a clear conversation about what the realities are in a particular transaction is really important.
Love it. So again, it's case specific, it's scenario specific. It's a little bit about what the client feels comfortable with and what their style is, but also what are we trying to do here? What's the situation going to allow for? And so much, I mean, even in today's market, when you look around, I think there's no better case, right? Because we are seeing lots of homes that are receiving multiple offers.
Yes.
And yet we're seeing others that have been on the market, and we've got buyers that are still able in some instances to negotiate concessions and buy downs. So even within one period of time, you can't say necessarily that every single home is a strong seller's market or every single home is a strong buyer's market. There's everything in between. And the professional is able to show up on the scene, take an inventory of the situation, and then advise their client accordingly.
Absolutely.
Love it.
It's all about the individual situation.
Yeah. Great. Love it. So let's segue that and talk about market conditions, Robin. We're talking here in end of March 2024. And what are you seeing out there in the housing market here in Portland?
I'm seeing a lot of buyers out there, a lot of multiple offers. I feel like the market is bouncing back in a way that I haven't seen in several months. And so it's really having to educate buyers because they've seen in the news that interest rates have made demand fall. They see that there's uncertainty in some ways in the housing market. And then the reality is there are a lot of buyers out there and they are ready to write offers. And
Mm-hmm.
so, as you know, one of our most recent transactions, it was a multiple offer situation.
Mm-hmm.
I just wrote an offer today for another client, multiple offer situation. And so it's multiple offer situations in lots of different price ranges too.
Mm-hmm.
So I think buyers are really starting to get used to mortgage rates and where they are and have decided that they don't want to sit on the fence anymore and forgo the opportunity to start building equity in a home. And they're ready just to jump in. It's like you
Yeah.
can't predict the market, so you might as well get in there.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I mean, totally. And I think it's interesting because, you hear it. I mean, you always hear that people say, well, because rates are high, it's a bad time to buy. And listen, I mean, we're not going to sit here and say it's, is good or bad necessarily. I would say in any particular market, there are opportunities and ways to think about it. And I would say, with a higher interest rate environment, yes, affordability is a challenge. Affordability is a challenge for a lot of people, and I wish I could change that. But it is what it is. And the reality is that if rates have gone from 3 to 7 or 8% and house prices have barely budged, then it seems unlikely in the future we're going to see a situation where home prices are going to fall. And I think, to your point, I think, buyers are realizing that to say, well, gosh, I really wish I could go back in time and buy a house when rates were 3%, but I can't. And I might as well look at it now and move forward. And we also know, of course, the demographic trends are really favorable for buying as well. Yeah, it's an interesting market for sure. What about sellers? I'm curious to know your conversations with people who are potentially looking at selling these
Mhm.
days, because we know, given the interest rate environment where 96% of homeowners in Oregon have rates, that are under 6%,
Mhm.
um, what are you hearing from sellers that say, "Gosh, I'd like to move, but because I've got this fixed rate, I'm not going to"? What do you see in terms of existing homeowners and their willingness to make transitions?
Right. I mean, a couple of different things. One, a lot of people who really like their home or they like the location, but they just need some changes. A lot of times we have a conversation about whether or not it makes sense to remodel or add on. And so I'll say, well, here, I'll give you a comparative market analysis based on the way your house is right now. Why
Mm,
don't you look into getting some bids from a contractor or talk to an architect about doing some of this remodeling, and then they get the bid back and it's huge because
right.
the cost of construction is so much higher right now than people can imagine. And so then the conversation starts to say, well, we really do want to change. And so it's like, what is it that is going to get a person to that point where they're ready to actually make that change? And a lot of times that's a personal conversation between the sellers. I just provide the information and then act as a sounding board.
Hmm.
And then they come to the decision on their own. A
Yeah.
lot of the sellers that I'm working with right now, though, it's a change in circumstances. So it's either divorce or actually one person is selling and then they're merging households. I have one set of sellers. They just need something that is more friendly for later years. They like one level living. Currently, they have a home that has 3 levels. So they're being proactive instead of waiting until something happens and they're no longer able to navigate the stairs.
Hmm.
And then other sellers, it's estates, people moving out of state, job relocations. So there are lots of different reasons why people sell. But you do hit on something that many people who do have a 3% interest rate, it's going to take something really special for them to make the decision to sell.
Right. Right. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, and we'll see. I think over time, you're right. I mean, life continues to happen regarding of the
Mhm.
interest rate environment. So you mentioned some of the life events,
Mhm.
marriage, divorce, kids, job change, health changes, whatever the case may be. Those things are unimpacted by interest rate changes, and those things are continuing to happen. And so what I project, or my narrative I'm telling myself, is that there's a lot of homeowners out there that would probably like to move, but don't feel like the pain of whatever they're dealing with or compromising on is greater than the benefit of this low interest rate environment that they have. But it feels
Exactly.
like over time that's going to wear down.
Mhm.
And hopefully have more housing supply. So I mean, just as you've been operating in this environment now for 12, 13 years. The narrative you hear is that the supply of homes available is really low. And so again, there's people out there who might want to sell, but are like, well, there's nothing available. It's needle in a haystack, so I'm not gonna worry about it. But what do you think the current condition is in terms of supply of housing, and what types of strategies can a person take to try and find that right place, even in an environment where there's not a ton of options?
Mhm. So it depends on what people are looking for. That we have some clients right now who were looking for something on a large lot so they could build a pool
Mm,
uh, in a larger house. So trying to find a property that has enough room for a pool and a flat yard. It's like finding a needle in a haystack sometimes. So those really specific things, we keep an eye out. We put things out within our company, see if anybody has anything coming up. I have other clients who are looking at a very specific area, and so they've outlined different homes that they like, and
hmm.
so door knocking to see if the sellers are interested in selling. I've done letters before to homeowners and said, I do have a client who's interested in your home. This is a real person. This isn't, some type of gimmick.
Hmm.
Uh, I've had some people contact me when I've done that previously, but I do feel like the inventory is increasing.
Hmm.
Every day there are things coming on the market that buyers that we're working with are interested in.
Hmm.
So that's a good sign. I mean, we're in the height of the spring selling season, and it's nice to see some inventory out there and good inventory.
Yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure. I want to go back to the buyer side a little bit because multiple offers is a theme of the day, right? And it seems like just in the last month or so, we've seen a significant uptick in the number of them. I don't have any data on that, but anecdotally, it seems to be the case. Um, again, recent transaction we've had the pleasure of partnering on and helping a customer on multiple offer situation, and of course, you're the quarterback in that situation. What if you were giving advice to a home buyer who's entering this market and they realize that they may have to compete with other buyers? What advice do you give them in that initial buyer consultation to say, hey, these are the steps, these are the strategies that you need to take to increase the likelihood that you can get your offer accepted in a competitive bid situation?
Sure. Well, we learned a lot in 2021
Lots of
during
experience.
the height of the market, and we got really used to writing offers that were significantly over list price, higher earnest money deposits, sometimes a release of earnest money after the inspection period, shorter inspection periods. A lot of times we'll even do a ceiling on the amount of repairs that would be requested, or not ask for any repairs below a certain amount, like below $5,000.
Hmm.
Waiving the appraisal gap is another common thing that we've seen. Trying to do a quick close uh, is also super important, or it can be. It depends on the
Hmm.
situation, but it can be really important to the sellers. Providing a rent back, free rent back, up to 60 days could be another attractive term for some sellers. I always tell my clients that sellers want certainty and they want stability. And so
Mhm.
anything that you can do to provide that to them is going to be well received because
Yep.
they really just want to know that the transaction is going to close and it's going to provide a minimal amount of stress.
Yep. Yeah,
Yeah.
we like to tell our clients about hurdles in a race, right? So,
Mhm.
you're going to be running a race with the seller, and every single one of those hurdles that's in the race is a potential for the deal to fall out, right? So the more hurdles, the more contingencies that you can proactively be willing to live without, that's telling the seller there's going to be fewer opportunities for this to go upside down. And
Mhm.
obviously, I would think I've never been at the table advising a seller like you have. Price is obviously typically going to be a pretty important factor. The seller's looking to net the most amount of funds. But in some cases, I've had clients' offers accepted, I'm sure you have as well, where maybe it's not yielding the highest net price to the seller, but it's close. But the seller feels like because some of these hurdles have been removed, it's a more reliable number.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. They
Yeah.
want something that's going to be reliable. I love the analogy with the hurdles and the race. That's great. I might
Yeah,
have to
feel
steal
free to. I probably got it from somewhere else, so feel free to use it whenever. What are you most excited about in real estate in 2024 as we move forward in the industry or in the market? What things
that.
are you looking forward to?
So, I mean, obviously there are a lot of changes
Hmm.
in the market that are coming down the road.
Hmm.
Uh, I'm excited about being able to help clients in a meaningful way and to be able to explain things to them so that they understand the process better. In some ways, I think that our industry has missed an opportunity to explain how buyers agents are compensated. And now that that's front and center, we have an opportunity to explain all the things that we do as buyers agents
Hmm.
and why we're worth the commission that we are paid.
Hmm.
So I think with the changes in the real estate industry, it's an opportunity to show our professionalism and to show that we are a valuable part of the home buying process.
Hmm.
So I'm excited about it. I think this is going to be a great year. Anytime there's a lot of change, there's an opportunity for growth and there's an
Hmm.
opportunity to do things a different way.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I feel like you're well suited. I was actually listening to a webinar earlier today, and one of the I think big tasks for people in the real estate community moving forward is understanding how to define value, right? Because again, I think the media and a general home buyer may not necessarily understand all the steps, and it's still a fairly cumbersome process.
Mhm.
And to try to navigate on that on your own can be a real challenge. And they were talking about, some of the things that you have to do to be able to communicate and build trust with a home buyer. And one was some of the things you've outlined, right? Which is communication, right? And communication from the standpoint of explaining the process, right? So here's all the steps in the process. Here's where we're at. Here's what's going to happen next. And then by demonstrating and actually executing on those steps, meaning, hey, this is going to happen in 2 days. When that happens, you are now showing your customer you're trustworthy and you're reliable. And reliability is another big part of it. And then competency, right? So that idea of professionalism. And I would argue, Robin, that, because of your background in, your legal profession and all the different ways you've learned to negotiate, and just your general experience in transacting, hundreds of homes over time, you are more qualified, you are more competent than any, lay home buyer out there. And just like a person hires a CPA, a financial advisor, a mortgage person, a doctor, you have that competency and you have that expertise. So I'd say you should be excited because I feel like you're well suited to take on the industry as it evolves in 2024. So excited to watch you continue to grow and flourish. Robin, if anyone wants to get a hold of you, how do they do that?
My email address is rspringer@windermere.com. And you can find me on Instagram at, I think it's Robin Springer PDX is my Instagram. And, I'm happy to talk to anyone about the home buying process and what that may look like this year.
Wonderful. Well, any last words besides roll tide, Robin?
Well, I would give you a Nick Saban quote, but I don't have one handy. He has
Oh,
some great quotes
we'll edit that in later, maybe.
about hard work and determination and being better than your opponent through hard work, which who doesn't love that? But I think that the biggest thing right now is just that, I mean, home ownership is still part of the American dream, and the ability to put down roots in a community and to thrive in that community and see it be successful, that's one of the things that most people really look forward to as they become adults. And being part of that process and helping people find their community is really just a fun experience, and I feel grateful to be part of it and to be able to work with you. And one of the last thing that you said when you talked about trust, I think that's such an important component because we both work in industries where trust is of the utmost importance, because a lot of people don't know the ins and outs of the mortgage industry, or they don't know the ins and outs of the real estate industry. And so they really put their trust in us
Mhm.
that we are going to look out for their fiduciary interests. And that's why I love working with you, because you do that and you explain things so well to clients and show them what their options are. And so I appreciate that.
Well, we appreciate that as well. I think I had an economics professor call that asymmetric information, and it absolutely makes the world go round. So, well, Robin, thank you so much for joining us
Okay.
here today on Real Talk. And if anyone wants to get a
Yeah.
hold of you, you can also contact me. Happy to relay your contact information. And Robin, thanks for joining. All the best in 2024 and beyond.
Thank you so much, Evan. I appreciate it.